All right, so we're going to be going over aesthetics weighting TTVs. I have midwit fatigue. Now, this guy, he actually looks maxing content, but the fact that he's talking about other things, I like that because, in my opinion, it sort of shows there's a lot more to it. I think there's a lot more to just life in general. So it sort of gets boring sticking on one content type, in my opinion. Like, I can't do it. And not only that, that you can only make so much of the same content because eventually you just start recycling the same content that you did before. So, anyways, let's get to it.
Have you ever spoken to someone and it seemed like they were more concerned with being technically correct rather than being correct on spirit?
Samantha says, import third world, get third world. Well, these are not imports. These are human beings. But if you're referring to, there being a farmer's market, that's kind of a first world thing.
So, I like to point out he puts I took the word import 100% literally now, so I don't have to address any actual core concept. Basically, this is one way to divert the argument, and to not actually talk about the core concept of immigration, which is the fact that when you import somebody from a completely different country, um, yeah, there could be problems because their culture does not necessarily have the same um, rules or regulations, especially laws, than your culture does. And hitting a woman in that culture might be completely legal. And some other very crazy behavior is not necessarily, I guess you can always say, prosecuted. For instance, the grape issue in India, as an example. So, yeah.
This is a phenomenon which is called the midwit. This is someone that is about average of the IQ bell curve and
This is funny. But notice that both of these, both the end right here, the supposedly low IQ and the high IQ person, they both come to the same conclusion. I actually believe that this low IQ person and high IQ person, both of them are actually the same. They they're both the same. The only difference is the low IQ person has a low amount of memory to work with, or data in this case, what we would consider data, and the high IQ person has a lot of data to work with. But their algorithm of thought is basically the same. They come to the same conclusion based on their algorithm of thought. The only difference is their actual memory itself. And this is something I think which is a little bit misunderstood is IQ doesn't really exist in the way that we think it does. It's just all algorithm. If you learn how AI memory works and how AI intelligence works, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. Because I made a video on this. If you're interested, go check it out. It's in the Think for Yourself playlist. Um, it's in the Think for Yourself playlist, and basically the bottom line is it's called the 12 different kinds of intelligence, if I remember correctly. And this person thinks the same way that this person does. And the only problem is because this person is like caveman or whatever, right? He has less knowledge to work with or less data to work with. But this person right here, Schopenhauer, which is I'm pretty sure who this is drawn after, Schopenhauer over here has more data to work with. And this person right here is what I would call a conformist, and they don't know how to think actually. But both of these people have algorithms of thought. This person actually does not have an algorithm of thought, which is really interesting. Or their algorithm of thought is more so based on what somebody else says rather than their own thought process. So it's really, really interesting. Really, 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 really interesting, actually.
tend to think that they're way above everybody else in terms of their intellect. Whereas someone with a low IQ kind of knows they're kind of dumb and simple. Someone with a high IQ kind of gets that they're smart, but there's probably smarter people than them. It's the midwits, this kind of John Oliver, smarmy, sarcastic, I know it all kind of guy, are the people that actually piss me off. And I'm gonna like go through how to detect a midwit, the kind of traps and bullshit that you hear from midwits quite often. Not everybody middle of the IQ bell curve is a midwit. A midwit is someone that wants the illusion of being an intellectual and kind of like copies what they think a smart person would say or would do, rather than actually being smart. And the quickest way to identify a midwit is to make a generalization. Just say a general statement about something, and Like, sure as the sun will rise, a midwit will say, actually, not all people are like that. Not everybody in this group is like that. Like, if you talk about how men are stronger than women, they'll bring up like Ronda Rousey or some crazy female powerlifter and see, as if that like disproves your theory. It's as if you said every single man on planet Earth is stronger than every single woman on planet Earth. And that's just obviously not what you're getting at. They really do think if they bring up a exception to this trend, this rule, they've somehow like won the argument. They've somehow, debunked you, right? And it's for this reason that talking to these people is fucking exhausting. We make generalizations to communicate information more efficiently and quickly. For example, if I say summers are hot or winters are cold, you know that I don't mean literally every single summer day is going to be hotter and every winter day is going to be cold. There's going to be some exceptions, right? But generally, this is just how we say it. And it's quicker just to say winter is cold rather than having like a laundry list of caveats and exceptions to this. We're just trying to like communicate information quickly here, right? Now, if you do this with a midwit in the room, like they'll like jump into action and like bring up these exceptions, these rare cases where like, there was like in 1997, there was a winter day that was 27 degrees. Like that just totally invalidates the spirit of what you're saying. This is like very common in politics. It's just a way to like bog down conversations with trivial details and bullshit.
Well, the reason it happens in politics is because, first off, politics is never in your own best interest. They're always in their own best interest. Any politician is always in their own best interest. And that means that if they have a potential, like all these lobbyists, for instance, taking them out to get food or whatever, all these people, they know that they're probably going to lie to the American public and say something like, oh, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And then they never follow up on it. And that's because they're actually in debt to the lobbyist or the people who are basically giving them bribes in this case, which are companies indirectly using lobbyists instead. So it's like you have to know where their interests really lie. And it's not in the people. In 90% of cases anyways, it's not. Especially as of recently. It's gotten even worse after Citizens United made a video on that as well. It's how power systems work.
Rather than actually discussing, the core of the issue. They want to get it to pedantic bullshit just to basically stop a real conversation from happening. And this is really at the core of the midwit. They are obsessed with being correct by bullshit technicalities rather than actually addressing the spirit of the thing.
Well, the thing is, they're only... I guess you could say correct by bullshit technicalities only against people who are in that supposed low IQ range who actually just have low amounts of data to work with. If they were against somebody if they were talking with somebody who has high amounts of data to work with, they wouldn't even be correct by his standard. And it's because they don't have the data. They're going to be overwhelmed with data, and they're going to attempt to try to diffuse the argument in some way or another towards and make it so that they sound right, but it'll never work. And the only problem is that you never really meet that Schopenhauer. That person is very rare in the modern day world. Like somebody with very high amounts of not only data to work with, but they also have like the correct algorithm of thought, and they're not conformist. It's like very, very difficult.
A good example that happened relatively recently was when Trump was talking to I think the Prime Minister of South Africa, and he was showing the slideshow to him, and he showed a picture in the slideshow of these it was these like crosses representing like a white South African farmer that was killed, right? And he made the technical error of saying that these were gravestones or grave sites, rather than saying that they were just a totem of someone that died, right? And of course, like the midwits in legacy media were going crazy about this. Like, oh, look at this. Look how uninformed Donald Trump is. Look at how he made this technical mistake. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, we're talking about the fucking same thing. Whether it's a gravestone or a markation of someone that died doesn't fucking matter. Like, this is a technical detail. The spirit of it is that these people have been killed. Like, that's bad. Like, that's the focus of the conversation here. But no, they want to take it to like technical, trivial details that don't fucking matter. And I think the midwit kind of comes from this kind of teacher's pet mentality, where these people have been like rewarded for being like technically correct and following orders and getting good grades.
They've been rewarded for following orders. That's the big thing, I think. It's following orders. So, I mean, like sadly, school is designed like that, right? So that's why you're bound to have so many midwits. It's because you would consider middle of the intelligence midwit or whatever. It's like, oh my god, all these people, right? No, it's just a ton of conformists. They're very, very common, and it's very difficult for them to not be common, especially with the circumstances and the situation which people have every day going to school. You're bound to make conformists going to school. That's the whole point of school in the first place, pretty much.
This is kind of their thing, right? And this kind of leads me on to some errors in behavior that different IQ groups tend to exhibit. The most easily understood error of someone in an IQ group are people with a low IQ. They tend to be more at risk for violent crimes. I believe violent crime worldwide peaks at around an 85 IQ. So that's kind of like their danger, right? And on the other hand, people with a high IQ, they tend to have a problem with being too neurotic, right? They tend to have a problem with like just anxiety and like concerning themselves too much with existential problems. Like, this is kind of the fault of the high IQ person, to the point where they're so neurotic that it kind of paralyzes them into doing stuff, right? Now, the fatal
analysis paralysis, but I don't necessarily think that's fully true. I think it's their algorithm. It's all their algorithm of thought. The supposed high IQ person, if their algorithm of thought is correct, they won't have any problems. But if they have so much data, but their algorithm of thought is like poor, then it gets really confusing because there's so much conflicting data and their algorithm doesn't necessarily know how to sort it in the first place.
Flaw of someone that is middle IQ is conformity. Conformity is like the real
there we go. See, that's the big, yeah, thank you.
Danger of being a middle IQ person, right? Since I think if you're like average IQ, you are smart enough to follow orders well. You can memorize stuff that people in authority tell you a lot better than someone that's a dimwit, right? But you're not smart enough to have critical thinking where you can basically think through things that are incorrect that you are told.
So that's a really, really good point, actually. In fact, I'm going to repeat that because of how important it is. But basically what he's saying is when you're a midwit or whatever, you're really good at following orders and you're really good at listening to what somebody else says and following those orders, but you aren't good, or you're not smart enough to know whether or not what they are saying could actually have some faults in it or not, right? You just like follow as is.
You are smart enough to follow orders well. You can memorize stuff that people in authority tell you a lot better than someone that's a dimwit, right? But you're not smart enough to have critical thinking where you can basically think through things that are incorrect that you are told. Does that make sense? And yeah, conformity with people that are around this IQ bracket is kind of nuts. Japan has this like crazy, like ridiculous drinking culture where, there's like these male businessmen that go out, on like the weekend. And there's like this weird like dynamic where people want to fit in with the group of men around them. So they end up drinking an absurd amount of alcohol to the point where they get alcohol poisoning just to keep up with the other guy that's thinking the same thing, that doesn't really want to drink that much, but was also trying to drink a lot to impress the guy that doesn't want to drink that much either. So it's like this, you're kind of fucking yourselves over by this level of conformity.
Well, the reason is because, as a general rule, Eastern cultures are just more conformist. And it partially actually does have to do, I would say, with the family structure, but it also does have to do with like the culture and the government and the school itself as well. I mean, the entire system is far more conformity based. So I would definitely say that's one of the reasons. You sort of see something similar in the United States with these hazings and stuff. Like, I think that's a pretty good example of it. Anyways, it does exist. It's just stupid.
As if there was like a low IQ person there, you could be like, oh, nah, this is bullshit. I don't want to do this. Why am I drinking so much? And a high IQ person can like articulate why this isn't a good idea, what's going on, and the social dynamics and yada yada. But if you're kind of middle IQ, like this is kind of a danger for you, right? Like just to be, way too conformist, do things that don't make any fucking sense, that a dumb person and smart person could say is a bad idea. And a funny thing happens, this phenomenon where people that are low IQ and high IQ often come to similar conclusions.
Yeah, see, why? That's the question. Why would somebody all the way on this end and all the way on this end come to the same conclusion? It's because these people are actually the same. This person all the way on the left and this person all the way on the right, they're the exact same. The only difference is basically what data they have to work with. What's their memory? That's what memory is, pretty much. It's data. And do they have a lot of data to work with? Yes. Then they come to the conclusion of, oh, it's bad. Do they not have as much data to work with? No. Well, they have their personal experience to work with. What does their personal experience say, right? And then it says the exact same thing as this guy all the way on the very right, usually. So that's the whole point. It's all based on algorithm of thought, whereas these people in the middle, their algorithm of thought is poor. And their data also. I would say what's interesting about these people in the middle is they actually just ignore their data, which is very strange. Like the data that they have, they're ignoring their own personal experience. Whereas the person all the way on the right and on the left, they don't ignore their personal experience. So once again, this is all just algorithm of thought. This is and the data that they have to work with. I mean, that's how I see this IQ problem, anyways. And once you put it like that, and once you simplify all of it, if you put it in terms similar to AI or how AI intelligence works, then it would make a lot more sense.
A very good example of this is the need to breed, right? Like the reproduction rates, right? Like that is a concern for people that are low IQ and high IQ. Like I could go to someone that is living in a cave that can't even read. You couldn't even teach him to read. And I could explain to him why having 2 or more kids is important, because you want your genetics to continue and your worldview and ideology to continue throughout generations, right? Like someone that is low IQ is going to understand that. This guy in the cave is going to nod his head at that. And if I tell this to someone that is high IQ, like a real intellectual, like he'll totally get it as well, right? The only people that have talked themselves into not reproducing are midwits. These are the only people that have done the mental gymnastics to come to the conclusion that they shouldn't have kids because of what they've been told, like global warming, that the world's going to end in like 12 years, or there's problems with AI and all these social problems, so I shouldn't have kids. They've done all these mental gymnastics to come to this conclusion that is just totally obviously bullshit from someone that is low IQ and high IQ. Like they both come to that conclusion that having kids is kind of fucking important. The only people that have talked themselves out of this is this middle of the road, like college educated soy-lennial type of person, right? They're the only people that don't seem to understand what a literal caveman could understand.
And they shouldn't have kids also. Just let them not have kids. Problem solved.
People that have a low IQ kind of instinctually get truths that an intellectual would understand and be able to, explain in a more fluent way. But like oftentimes, low IQ people kind of get when something's not quite right.
See, that's once again because these people, the person on the left and on the right, they both use their personal experience and how they feel. The same thing with like basically the vasectomies and whatnot. And this person on the left and on the right wanting kids, it's because all they're doing is they're literally listening to their internal compass, or you could call it their internal compass, their biological desire to have kids. And this person is magically, truly amazing, trying to somehow override that in some way. It's conformity.
Like the trust in the media, right? A low IQ person can like instinctually get that he is being gaslit by the media, the legacy media. He may not be able to articulate why and how this is happening, as well as someone that is like a true intellectual. But the low IQ person's on the right track. I think conspiracy theories are a pretty good example of this, right? The only people that thought that nothing fishy was going on during the pandemic were midwits. They were the only people that thought nothing fishy was going on. Like, if you just think through this, right, it's kind of obvious that the pandemic was an excuse for the elites to siphon more money from people in like the middle and lower classes, right?
I wouldn't say it's an excuse. I would say what the elites do is the elites, or supposed anyways, like the bottom 50% of people, they don't have one, the ability to comprehend that with crisis comes opportunity. So the pandemic was a crisis, and with crisis, once again, comes opportunity. So these bottom 50%, most of them don't understand that. The top 1% people usually understand that, and they're able to take advantage of that even more. Now, there are some people here who, in the bottom 50%, for instance, who are able to like recognize this, right? And then they do take advantage of it. But usually those people always move up here. So that's one of the really big parts of being up here more so, is recognizing with crisis comes opportunity and capitalizing on it quite a bit. If you just, as a general rule, this doesn't just apply, by the way, to wealth. This also applies to politics and war, anything, name it. With crisis comes opportunity.
I think this is kind of obvious, and you don't really need to go into conspiracies to see this. You can kind of just look at the graph, right, and look at the wealth gap, but also just look at things with your own fucking eyes. Remember during the pandemic how all of these like small businesses were closed, right? Like every street, they were all closed up. Every mom and pop's shop was closed, and yet Walmart was still open. All of these big retail corporations, they were continuing on. It's only the small businesses that, for whatever reason, couldn't get past the regulation. It's
that part is pretty sus. I gotta admit, that's definitely a very, very sus part. That's probably a clear indicator that there was definitely some shady stuff going on. I do agree with that for sure. Actually, that's a very good point.
not really a conspiracy if you can kind of see what's happening with your own fucking eyes, right? Like, someone that is low IQ is going to get that. Someone with a high IQ is going to get that. It's only the midwits that are going to argue against that. It's only the midwits that are gonna like try and argue about some technicality rather than just accepting what they see with their own fucking eyes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, thank you for watching. One of the requirements...
That's a very good video. I would say, well done, dude. Well done, Aesthetics TTV. You have a lot more information than just looks maxing content. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you found the video interesting. I sure as hell did. And I'll see you guys in the next one.